Okay, so we got student success models. Looks like there was 5 of them, I believe, that I remember reading. The AVID program, the advancement via individual determination, positive behavioral intervention supports, PBIS, sheltered instruction observation protocol, SIOP, multi-tiered system of support, MTSS, and individual plans of study, the IPS. Does anyone want to start with one of them specifically?
So I tend to, when I was looking this over, I was sort of immediately drawn first to the MTSS and IPS, just because we have to do so much of it in this district. And I don't know how heavily they're leaning into this stuff at Chisholm, but I know at the high school anyway, in seminars, we have sort of expectations for students to be doing IPS pretty regularly with, set benchmarks from the administration. So that's always kind of that was sort of where I first went. And then the MTSS, of course, we use pretty much statewide, I think, at this point. In fact, just at our staff meeting this morning, we had a discussion of just some reminders of how we're doing that at the high school. So those two kind of tend to strike me as most relevant to what I do. The IPS thing is I think particularly interesting for a couple of reasons. One is there is this sort of state expectation of that too that's coming down the pike. So that's kind of becoming the standard. And I see some really positive things about it, and I also see some kind of problems with it. It's obviously great to get students thinking about what happens next. High school, hopefully, is not the be-all, end-all, final goalpost for any of us, whether we go to college or not. So that part's great. What do you want to do next? And getting students to think specifically about that, I think is wonderful. At the high school, the way they're doing things now, they're really big on these digital portfolios that students are putting together, which is great. And I tell students all the time, this is something, because freshmen don't quite know what to do with this. When you say, hey, here's this thing we're putting together. They say, well, I don't get it. And I say, well, think of it as something you can take to someone and say, this is why you should hire me, or this is why you should, take me as a student. At the same time, I do always wonder in those situations. I know that when I was a kid, one of the questions I hated the most was, what do you want to do when you grow up? It just drove me nuts because I didn't have an idea. I mean, I knew there were lots of careers, but I knew that I don't know, I guess it took me a long time to find some sort of purpose or meaning behind it all. I think there's an important difference between this is something I'm doing as a job and this is something I'm doing that's meaningful. And I don't always feel like IPS, at least the way that we're doing it at the high school, really drills into that distinction. I know that it's kind of, it has potential to, but I don't know that it always does. And I think kids get kind of confused and overwhelmed by that sort of lack of clarity. So
I feel like that's really interesting and like a really good point. So one of the key pillars of school counseling, other than looking at academics and social emotional well-being, is looking at career and post-secondary preparation. It's one of the big key things that we as school counselors are tasked with. And so the IPS is that's a really big part of it, I think. And specifically when I was reading about those, I was thinking about, the senior meetings that we've been having with all the seniors so far, just kind of tracking okay, what are your plans for after you graduate? Because, this is it, this is the year. And I can completely see and like agree with like senior year should not be the only time that we're having those discussions. And it's like built into like school counseling programs. And if you have a comprehensive school counseling program, like you can really start career discussions with students like in kindergarten. And obviously you're not going to be like drilling into, you know, like getting them like into the proper track right away. But, you know, in elementary school, it's more so like helping them understand like what options are out there. So like you can have career days and or like parent days where parents come in and talk to the kids. Like more elementary school is more so like just letting them know like the vast opportunities that are out there. And then when you get to middle school, I can't remember the program that we're using right now for like our like inventories and whatnot for kind of helping the kids start to see where their interests lie. I cannot think of it right now, but that's when they'll start the program and start doing like career and interest inventories and see like what jobs might match up with their interests. And then they continue that in high school. And then high school is when you kind of like start meeting with them more regularly to talk about like grades and GPA and all the different testing they can do for college, or if they're not planning to go to college or universities, like talking about, you know, like different job corps options and things like that. So at the school that I'm at, the high school I'm at, like I said, we've done the senior meetings. The kids have been doing like their interest inventories and whatnot, that program. I'll think of it as soon as we're done recording, I'm sure. So like it's been nice to see that aspect of it, but I can totally see how also like there are going to be the kids that are, you know, falling through the cracks just based on the sheer number of kids versus counselors. But I guess the idea and the hope is that like at some point, you know, between middle school and their high school experience, like they've started to be given the tools to consider those things, that so that even if they don't have a plan, you know, as freshmen, because most don't, you know, we're at least trying to build on that. So when they get to their senior meetings, they don't come in and say like, I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to do. So yeah.
No, I think that both of you added a lot of good things to the conversation. At Chisholm, with working with Seth, or in the same district as Seth, I've actually hear a lot of what he was talking about for the first time actually in the professional development day yesterday, yesterday, Tuesday. The business department or CTE program, they all met, and we included the Chisholm staff as well. And we talked about a lot of their goals for the year and the individuals' plans of studies and what all of those portfolios are. Because I've actually never heard of them. I'm not very far removed from high school, but I really don't remember doing a whole lot of these kinds of things. I'm sure we did. I just don't remember or didn't apply myself, I guess, well enough. But at Chisholm, at least, the one that sticks out the most for where I work right now is the multi-tiered system of support. As far as what we actually do with some of the seminar groups and mentoring a little bit and trying to evaluate how often we should be meeting with certain kids, and some kids we don't have to meet with very often as much because they don't need as much support. And then one of the other ones that kind of stuck out to me was the AVID program one, the advancement via individual determination. Just some of the stats that I was reading on that one kind of interested me. It kind of just seems like it's a life prep, not class, but like a kind of some sort of success model with it, I guess, that allows students to become more prepared, usually from like lower socioeconomic status backgrounds, those kind of students, but it allows them to be more prepared to explore all the options available to them, versus just saying, no, like you can't afford college, you can't do anything. It kind of shows them like, hey, this is how you get scholarships, this is the FAFSA route, and all the different things that you can do. It's actually weird. I've never really heard of that. I don't think, again, like I said, I don't remember. If I did, it was like I wasn't applying myself very well to remember what it was, but my barber actually, he, and it sounds weird to bring up my barber right now, but he actually went to his old high school because he was in the AVID program there. And they asked him, he just opened up his own shop, and they asked him to come speak to the seniors of this year and kind of go full circle with the whole program and everything and try to help guide some of them to find different alternative paths other than just college. So I thought that was pretty cool. Hearing from him about it. I actually talked to him last week about when I got a haircut and kind of saying like, hey, like I'm starting to read some stuff about that in some of my classes. And it was really cool to be able to kind of get an inside perspective on a student role going through that program. So I thought that was interesting.
For sure. Yeah, both of you had brought up MTSS, and that was another one that I kind of focused on this week with the readings. And like you were saying, like being able to identify, the students that have more significant need for like interventions or supports, I think is really key. It's just thinking about like there are so many things that are asked of teachers, administrators, like staff at schools. So being able to know that like at least to some degree all students are being reached, I think is like really important, and what's really great about the MTSS program or like framework. I'll be interested to see how those frameworks and interventions like actually play out. Because again, like I think the school is just, kind of a beast of itself. And I think just like anything else, there's always really good intentions with things, but how they actually are implemented and executed is different. With school counseling, and thinking about like MTSS, and I even went to like the American School Counseling Association website, and kind of seeing like what their like position is with MTSS and their rationale and whatnot. And just based on the different tiers, like they actually do list the different ways that like counselors can like use that framework. So like with tier 1 being trying to reach all students, that's like going into the classrooms and doing like classroom lessons. And then from that, when you're doing, like exit tickets or, surveys of some sort, you can then identify students that maybe have a little bit more need that could be a part of like small groups or independent counseling, like individual counseling. And then from there, like tier 3 would be like those that we would probably refer out to like other like therapists that do more long-term care and that sort of thing. And I have seen how that has played out so far, like in a counseling role. Like we have a student or a number of students that like, we have like collaborative meetings to discuss like what we can do to further support them, because what, is done with the general population like is not cutting it for that student, because they are, we're seeing issues with either academics or social emotional well-being or, all of the above. How does that like look for you guys, like as teachers? Like, because I feel like at my understanding, I feel like school counselors kind of have the ability to have a more like vast like reach, because we're not in a classroom, all day. We're able to kind of like pull in students as needed, go do lessons as needed. So like, what does that look like for you, like in a classroom, if you're trying like looking at like a tiered model, like is it more so like you do what you can with the whole class and then refer students out?
Yeah, I could jump in and speak to that a little bit for what we do at the high school. And as you mentioned, Alyssa, this to me right now at the high school here feels like one of those programs that has really good intentions, but is maybe not being executed as well as it should be. Essentially, the way we have things set up now is we as teachers kind of do our thing. We teach, we assume everyone's sort of that tier 1 until there's a reason to believe they're not. And there have been sort of mixed messages on this. The one thing that seems reliably to get students sort of moved from tier 1 to tier 2 is their grades. It's an easy, it's an easy metric where we love that kind of hard data, for better or worse. And so that tends to be the thing that reliably will move a student from tier 1 to tier 2, which is great. So when that happens, teachers are notified, this student is sort of being moved to tier 2. Here are sort of the steps and that we need from teachers to try to work with that kid and get them back into that tier 1 flock. If those interventions work after 2 weeks, we tend to move them back down. It's sort of set up in those 2-week blocks. So move them back down. If they don't, they might go up to tier 3, or they might stay at tier 2, depending on sort of if they're making progress or, what they need. A little stickier at the high school right now where I am, is really anything else that might be worth considering as a sort of a factor in where these students sit. I've had, in fact, just this year, I had a student who just he's struggling in my class, which is a little bit strange. People think of the orchestra kids as being, the good kids or whatever. And so I sent a note up to the counselors and the administration, said, hey, this kid, he's a good player, but he's socially, he's not, something's not right here. Can we think about what to do about this? And what I found in that whole exchange is that the mechanisms for handling the social emotional side of the MTSS structure at the high school here in Newton are maybe not as well developed, because they rely more on those softer metrics. I kind of get the feeling is that it's not, oh, well, this is a number we can assign to that, and therefore we can see what that does. It's, well, this kid is having more bad days than I feel like is normal. So that's kind of where we are here with it. And again, for better or for worse, I think there are some things that are good and moving in the right direction, at least, and some things that just kind of need to be revamped. Kobe, you mentioned that you guys do it sort of through seminar at Chisholm. I'm curious what that looks like.
Yes. So our MTSS framework is really implemented only into seminar. I don't want to say that as a teacher role, at least it is. Counselors are doing their thing. They host small groups. Sounds like, let's say you guys have some at your school too. Like they have small groups, certain things. Like we have some 8th graders that are in those tier 2 groups that go to the middle or to the elementary school, Slate Creek, and the same. That's like a shared parking lot for where we're at. And they go over there and go read to kids and try to mentor kids to try to include positive relationships in their life and stuff like that, and letting them kind of have that growth mindset of like, you can be a leader too, and you can still expand no matter your circumstances at home or whatever the case is. So that's the counselor role. But as a teacher, really, they try to implement it into seminar, which last year for us, Seth, was SDL for summit learning. Do you know what that is, Alyssa? Are you familiar with that?
Did you say SEL?
SDL, self-directed learning. It's part of the Summit learning platform. We did that as a district last year, the last couple of years, and I think, Seth, did you guys get rid of it at your school?
The high school never really had it since
I thought they did.
in the last couple of years. They had it at Santa Fe.
Okay.
Santa Fe
and Chisholm had it,
and they've gotten rid of it. Yeah.
And we just got rid of it this year. So for my second year, it's kind of our seminar and SDL, the same concept. Basically, it's like a homeroom for all the kids to hopefully have some type of positive interaction with at least one adult in the building that's checking in with them, checking on their grades, checking SEL levels with them, trying to make sure that they build a connection with someone and letting them know that someone cares. And that's where like mentoring comes in and all those kinds of things. And that's last year we had a full class period of an hour and like 20 minutes of SDL. This year, our seminars every day at the end of the day, but they also included what are called interest-based groups that are taking place of seminar. And they thought it was a good idea to have those 4 times a week. And so now seminar only actually meets 1 time a week, and it's only for like 30 minutes, the last part of the day, on Thursdays only. So either kids are they come check in with their seminar teacher every day for 3 minutes, and then they either go to interest-based groups or they go to an intervention for math or reading to get extra help. So the implementation process that we keep talking about, it kind of depends on the district and the school and what they end up doing. It sounded like a great idea on paper, but to hopefully encourage kids to come to school and get them involved with non-academic type subjects with the interest-based groups. But now we have kids that don't get to check in with someone every single day, but 3 minutes. And then there's no time for mentoring on Thursdays, because those are also the athletic days or events days for the non-athletics, what's that called? Activities. So athletics and activities both leave very commonly on Thursdays. So, and it's usually at the end of the day. So they miss the seminar period either because of those, or they are supposed to be doing homework during seminar when they actually do have it on Thursdays. So there's not really a time to check in with kids and try to get them in these tiers for our perspective and try to work with them. So supposedly that's changing in semester. They're going to reduce the days of interest-based group and go on our black and gold block schedule. So like I think black days on seminar period is going to be an actual seminar, and then gold days is supposed to be interest-based group. So just hopefully we'll have more of the tiered system kind of being applied to checking in with students and figuring out where they're at, and also giving them time to work and get caught up on classes and stuff. So it's very interesting that it was implemented that way this year. Like I said, it sounded good, I think, up front. And then we kind of got into it 2 weeks into it, and we're like, this is a horrible idea. Like all the staff was thinking the same thing. And they're like, well, it's probably too late to change it now. And we kind of just stuck it out. So that's what we're still doing. So I think it's changing this semester. So hopefully.
It's really interesting. We have kind of like seminars too. It's called Pride Time. And then the students also have GPS, which is their guided personal study. So most of them have both of those in their schedules. GPS would be every other day, and then Pride is every day. And Mondays is Mindset Mondays. So that's kind of when the students do their social emotional learning. From my understanding though, is last year they had like an employee, like someone that their job was like doing like the Mindset Monday prep and getting stuff out to teachers, and like training the teachers that are in the Pride times to help guide the students in that. But we don't have a person in that position right now. And so the teachers are kind of just tasked with doing the Mindset Monday lessons, which is usually like a video or something like that. But I mean, and then every other day, that's not Monday, the students just have like Pride time is basically their time to either do homework, check in, kind of like you said, with their Pride time teacher, who like if they're students that have IEPs, it would be their case manager. Otherwise, it's just kind of like a teacher they're assigned to, or they can pass to other teachers, to get support on homework or classes or whatever. And I feel like the general consensus, like from our school about kind of the system we have set up is, like that Pride time is also when we would send out like different like surveys and things like that need to be done, and I forgot what one it was, but there was a survey recently. Oh, the Sabers and the My Sabers. I don't know if you guys have that, but the Pride time teachers do the My Sabers for their Pride time students. And a lot of the comments from teachers are like, sometimes they don't even know the kids in their Pride time, because either they pass every single day or they're not there, they're not engaged. It's not like students that they have in class, So I think that also is something that I've been thinking about a lot in terms of like these systems that sound good on paper, but when implementing, I think there needs to be, a little more, I don't know, tweaking with it. And it's hard to do because the vast number of students compared to teachers and whatnot to get, people that already have relationships together and whatnot is difficult. But I think there's also other ways to kind of, get the the implementation closer to what it was intended to be. So I think that was interesting, just hearing kind of like your thoughts on it. And I'm glad that it sounds like they're going to kind of change things for second semester. And I mean, that is part of it, is just trying something and seeing if it works or not. But when you get locked in then too, that's kind of where things can fall apart if you don't get to change them quick enough.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of, I think we're at that point in the semester where it's like, I think the iceberg is starting to tip. It's like, oh no, this is kids are starting to kind of get annoyed, and they're tired of getting yelled at to get their stuff done, but then they're not given time, kind of thing, how they see it. But
Yeah.
we'll see. Hopefully it gets better with the change, whatever change does come this semester. But it's interesting you mentioned the My Savers, or the My Savers and the Teacher Savers, whatever it is. We do that for the seminar, our seminar kids as well. And I have that same exact problem that your teachers are complaining about. It's like, I have kids that are in my seminar that I do not teach. And I was supposed to evaluate them like the second week of school, I think, with the My Savers. And I'm like, I don't know them. I don't teach them. I just see their face on Thursdays. Really's it. Like, I don't even count the 3 minutes that I see them every day. So it's like, I don't know how I'm supposed to evaluate these kids at all. Like,
well, and then like from a counseling perspective, because I was talking to our mental health liaison that kind of like heads up like the Savers and My Savers, and we were going over like the results, and she was kind of showing me, like what she does with that. And we talked about that, where it's like, okay, well, we're looking for reliable data about kids' mental health. And for some students, you kind of have to take, their number, like their assessment of themselves with a grain of salt, based on what you know of them, or just knowing that some students won't care and they'll just click buttons, But then, so you want to look then to what the teachers say. But again, you're going off teachers that either don't know the kids or know them very limited. So it's like, how valid can their assessment be? Because if there's no red flags, in the short amount of time that they see them, we could be missing out on some like actual really concerning students because they're not evaluating themselves properly. And then we have teachers that don't know them, so they can't evaluate them properly. So it becomes kind of this scary thing of like, how do we make sure we're reaching the kids that need the social emotional support if we're not getting the data or the touch points that we need to know that they need help? So it's tricky.
Yeah, and it also depends on the relationship built between the teacher and the student, as far as the way the student acts. Because I have a lot of students that like, I see they're rated really low, and I'm like, I don't like, I see based on what the teachers and what they've rated themselves and stuff, and I'm like, I do not see that same kid when they come into my classroom. Not that my classroom's better or anything like that, but like, it's not the same kid that I hear things about, and I'm like, that does not happen. So I don't, it doesn't make sense to me. So it's interesting to see sometimes, because yeah, like I'll have a kid that like I ranked really highly on for a lot of things, and then I like hear feedback later. It's like, he shouldn't have been ranked that high. I was like, that's how he is in my class. So I don't know what to tell you. He might not like other classes, so, or teachers, I guess. So
Yeah.
I have no idea. So it's hard, because I would hate to have to look at that data and break it down like you're saying. As a counselor, you guys have to figure out which one you're going to take with a grain of salt, and kind of move forward with. So that's interesting.
Well, see, I think that kind of underscores a couple of things that have sort of popped up a few times in this discussion. And one is that as we, if we, are interested in taking this sort of tiered approach, that really only works if everybody sees it the same way and works on it the same way and approaches it the same way. And Alyssa, you'd mentioned that at one point your school had someone who kind of did that,
Mm.
and now they don't, and it's caused these problems. But so there's that level of it from a teacher's perspective of, we're given this thing, say, here, do it.
Mhm.
But we don't, I mean, what does that mean? What does that look like? How I do it might be totally different from how Kobe does it, or how you do it, Alyssa. And
Mhm.
so that's one thing. And then, as you say, Kobe, there's this other side of it where people are not consistent. None of us are. There are different sides to all of us. And one of my concerns with any of these systems is that they address multifaceted human beings very one-dimensionally.
Mhm.
I know we're running short of time, but just a quick anecdote. My sister actually was in the AVID program in middle school where she went, and she was often come home very frustrated with it, not because it was a bad program, but because it painted her as a particular person. Kobe, you had mentioned that it tends to be geared towards people of a certain socioeconomic class, or that. And so her feeling was that the program put her in that box, whether it was true or not. And I think a lot of these programs have a nasty habit of doing that, where, great, here's this kid. Yes, they need support in these 3 areas. But if we say that means this is the kid who's failing, or that means this is the kid who's, depressed or can't deal with anxiety, that may be true sometimes, but that's true sometimes for all of us. And so weighing that out's another really sticky wicket with these, I think.
Labeling can be very dangerous, and you have to do it very cautiously. And for counseling like that, especially like if you're running into where you have to like provide a diagnosis for some reason, because once someone has like a specific label, if they're aware of it, it can be one of those situations where it's self-fulfilling prophecy, where they're told that this is what they have and this is how they behave because they have it, and so they live their life like that. Or other people see that label and assume certain things about the student. Well, they have XYZ, so they're not going to be able to do this, and this. So we kind of put those barriers in place for the students that weren't initially there. And so then they're facing these barriers that shouldn't be there, and now they have more challenges. So I think that's a really good example that you gave of some of the challenges with that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely one of those touchy subjects type situations when you come to labeling. And the worst thing is, especially like dealing with middle school age, and I'm sure it's still relevant at the high school age, is just we have like less than a minute, but is dealing with those kids that as soon as they hear that label, they shut down, or they excuse their behavior because of those labels. And it's like, no, you still have to be held accountable for some of the things you're doing.